Hey, YouTube. I'm back. We're back. We're trying to podcast, I guess, just for you to listen to or something like that. And in this video, we're kind of gonna go talk about the lore of, like some of the lore. I'm not gonna go over all the lore, and the way I'm gonna do it is I'm really just gonna kind of summarize it as best as I can, and uh do it in a pretty sarcastic and oversimplifying way. So,
Oh, this ought to be good.
so, yeah. If I get a lot of lore things wrong, if I skip over your favorite part in the lore, just know that that's kind of the whole point of this joke and of the joke. But yeah, we're gonna start off with the world chalice slash world legacy. This was in a duel, or the solo duel on Master Duel. So if you want the full story, you can just go read that, stuff like that. But basically, here's what happened. So the three World Chalice monsters, Ib, uh, Avram, and Longyon, or I don't remember his name. Uh, are all the villagers, and Ib is she's the like priestess or whatever. She has these magic powers and everything, and they're still kids at this point, pretty much. And her brother is the guy, I couldn't remember his name. Anyway, they hear a voice and they go out of their bubble, and the only thing they know about the outside world, outside of their village, is that they think the Mech Knights are evil and that they use the crawlers and stuff like that to destroy the world. Anyway, they hear a voice and they go running. Ib almost dies and runs into Lee, the World Chalice Fairy. Lee gives them all powers and says, "Hey, go mess up the Mech Knight." Well, fast forward, they're on their way and they get all these powers and stuff like that. And along the way, they get a dragon dog companion. And next thing you know, bada bing, bada boom. They fight hordes of crawlers. They run into the Mech Knights. Turns out the Lee is the evil one, not the and everything, and not the Mech Knights. And the Mech Knights are the good guys. Crawlers are just kind of abominations that are just creatures that don't really have a mind of their own. Uh, Lee possesses Ib, and Avram ends up killing them, merged, because is the only way to stop it. We get Lee's backstory, which Lee, the World Chalice Fairy, helped work on the Mech Knight project and the World Legacy stuff, because she's trying to harness all the World Legacy weapons. Alright, you with me so far? It's pretty.
Yeah, so the missing names that you have are Ningrisu
That's his name.
and Imduk.
Yeah,
Imduk?
yeah. So,
The doggo's name, Doggo Drago.
yeah. Uh,
Okay, this sounds and then the Mech Knights, in my mind, I'm comparing that to Power Rangers almost, but they're just full-time machine like things, I guess, right?
Kinda. So, yeah, pretty much. Also, the
Because you have a
nightmares.
color for each one.
Yeah. Also, the nightmares
Oh,
that
nightmares are
happen.
later on, though, aren't they? Because
They're
aren't
the
they like
ones.
the corrupted versions
Yes,
of different things?
they're the
They're the
corrupted
corrupted
version of the
versions that
Mech Knights
Lee has,
themselves.
right?
They corrupt it.
Yeah.
Lee uses the power of Ib because Ib also has power. That's why she's a priestess. Hear Lee's voice and everything calling to her and stuff like that. So he uses Lee's power that she gets as mixed with Ib's to corrupt all the Mech Knights and stuff like that and make them into the Nightmares. That's why Nightmares are spelt with a K. Everything is because anyway. Uh, long story short, though.
How do crawlers work into this?
Oh, they're just kind of creatures, I'm pretty sure. But Lee but Lee dies, Ib dies, sacrificing herself and everything. This makes Ningirsu so upset. He ends up getting a bunch of instruments together and using the power of darkness on these instruments to call down the World Wand to resurrect his sister. Meanwhile, Avram joins the Mech Knights or becomes the last Mech Knight, and we get that card where it's like, check this out.
Check this out.
Anyway, uh, somehow Ib comes back to life, and that's pretty much after a war happens with the guard dragons and the or Avram versus Ningirsu, and Ningirsu has the Orcus, Avram has the Crusadia stuff and everything. War happens. World One comes down, crashes, and somehow resurrects uh, Ib, as well as stopping the war, as well as probably killing a lot. World Legacy weapons are
Okay.
squishy world-ending threats. But now we're gonna move on to Albaz's lore, and the very brief summary I gave of it, I can give of it, is it's really about an emo boy named Albaz and his church girlfriend named Ecclesia, who uh, and has to deal with his gay or possibly bi or stalker or lover from another thing, or someone just a fan of Albaz in general named Aluber from the Despia, and the Despians are a bunch of theater fiends and stuff like that and fairies, so you know. Uh very brief summary. Pretty much what happens is uh Ecclesia is part of the Dogmatica Church along with Fleur de Lis. Fleur de Lis ends up dying at some point because the church is very corrupt. Albaz saves Ecclesia and everything, and they go on their merry way and everything and start adventuring. I don't know where the Tri Brigades come into this. I know that Aluber's whole point is that he wants to merge with Albaz. Albaz has the ability to shapeshift into a dragon until he doesn't, because Aluber forces himself inside of Albaz and fuses with them. And Ecclesia, I believe, somehow dies somewhere along the way, but he resurrects her, or is she's about to die, and then he fuses with her to resurrect her, and then they live happily ever after. That's the very
Wait.
oversimplified plot of the Albaz lore.
Okay, that is really simple. Like, okay, but then like what?
Uh-huh. Lord Soul's in there somewhere too. They will just live on a mountain, I believe. But yeah,
Like I know I always joke that I joke that Kit gets around because she seems to be in every single thing in that whole run of archetypes, but what?
I'm pretty sure Kit is like they meet Kit and everything, and Kit's like, "Oh yeah, I'll join you on your journey," and just kind of just joins and makes them weapons and stuff like that.
Konami just needs to release a freaking D&D or Pathfinder or any tabletop D20 or 3D6 system of some of these stories as you just a little, adventure book you could play through because this is real impressive. Some of this stuff, the world building is just really good, but then you're just like, were they trying to write an anime? Like,
Yeah, kind of. I know that a good example of, or like another like thing, if you want lore, I mean, eventually they're gonna probably put the Albaz lore on the branded lore onto Master Duel. So once again, I can't imagine they don't put that on there like they did with the World Legacy. If you have questions about like the World Legacy, if I got something wrong or whatever, just know I'm more being, comedic and not really trying to tell like the actual whole story. Uh, but yeah, some of the lore is pretty wild for this game. There's really cool lore though that are like what cards are based on and stuff. Like like the fairy tale cards, all of them are based on different fairy tales throughout history, and everything like that. Some of which most people probably know. Uh, I'll briefly go over which ones are like which. Like Sleeper is Sleeping Beauty, Cinderella is Cinderella, Snow is Snow White, Raksha is Anastasia, and Luna is Princess Kaguya, and they all have different effects, and each
Uh,
one of their effects kind of are supposed to like go into the lore of like what their fairy tales roughly.
yeah, the Luna one is probably my favorite because in my mind the card's effect works exactly as intended for the whole thing because it's like I'm going to find you a proper mate, and then finally when you get down to the one where there's nothing proper, it's like to the moon, we're getting married.
The impossible
There's
task and everything is what the balance effect represents, because what Princess Kaguya would do is she's from the moon, and she would give her suitors impossible tasks in order to like dissuade them pretty much, and they'd go on these quests, and obviously they never come back because it's a task. It represents sending another monster from the name and stuff like that with the same name, because two people cannot exist, pretty much the same person can't exist. I believe at one point though in Kaguya's story she does find a proper suitor, but he says he doesn't want to go back to the moon with her. And she gives him an apple or something, or a fruit that is supposed to give him immortality, and he rejects immortality. So, which isn't represented on her card, but the whole searching for a mate and then the impossible task she would give her suitors is, and she bounces back herself, and that is supposed to be her and her suitor going to the moon to live with.
that's actually pretty cool.
Anastasia's one is pretty cool too, because Anastasia's effect is like, or Raksha's effect is, you make your opponent gain 500, then they look at the top three and choose one of them for you to add to your hand. And the story of Anastasia is basically she's a princess, a Russian princess from a fallen uh, dynasty or whatever, and she was thought to be dead, and she goes and tries to convince her grandma, and her grandma pretty much looks through and like looks at her, and so does her family or whatever. What her family supposedly is, looks at her and stuff like that, and determines whether she is it or not, and that's why your opponent gets to choose. And the once per battle, you get this card before damage, you send it to the graveyard, is because unfortunately this story doesn't have a happy ending either. So in the story of Anastasia, they find out that the person, or they think that the person who is Anastasia in the story is not her, and sentence her to death and everything. So that's why she sends herself to the grave.
Oh man, that's God.
Uh-huh.
But then you think fairy tales are like that. They're meant to retell history through ages or retell like things that people have discovered and everyone adds things to it, but they're not really supposed to have a happy ending. Like most heroic tales and even fairy tales have awful endings because that's just it's more memorable like that. The happy ending thing is kind of a more, in a lot of stories, a more modern take on everything.
Well, it's
Like,
because it's
it,
meant to instill some type of lesson or fear. For Anastasia's tale, it is pretty much the tale of, don't pretend to be someone you're not, because there could be dire consequences. Uh, and like Snow White's, I don't remember what Snow White's thing is, but it like the original Little Red Riding Hood's thing is, hey, don't go into the woods alone. Pretty much.
oh yeah, yeah. The Little Red Riding Hood one's pretty
That one's real
brutal.
dark, and I'm glad that I'm not gonna have to talk about that one, because that would get us demonetized.
Oh yes, yes, I am very aware.
Uh, we're not even monetized, and I'd be like, no. Snow is pretty simple. I'm not gonna go too into detail. I'm not gonna tell the original story of Snow too much, other than what each effect represents. Like the Book of Mooning thing is giving someone else the poison apple putting it face down. And the 7 cards is supposed to represent the 7 dwarves. Her special summoning herself back from the grave is supposed to be her coming back out of her deep sleep.
Yeah.
That one's pretty simple. Rella's effect, discard a spell and get an equip spell, but the equip spell goes to your hand at the end of the turn, is because Fairy Godmother cast a spell, gave her glass slippers and all the stuff, and she only had till midnight. So there you go. It's pretty simple, that one too. Uh, so yeah, the spell ends at midnight. That's why the equipped spell comes back during the end phase. Sleepers, I think, is pretty interesting. So Sleeper is based on Sleeping Beauty. When it's flipped face down and you flip it face up, you special summon a monster and any monster. Well, that's supposed to represent the fact that she woke up because her suitor, and like the and the Disney ones and all the PG ones that I'm going to talk about here, and not all the messed up grim fairy tale ones and stuff like that, is she found her tutor, and her tutor got her with True Kiss. When your opponent activates a normal spell or trap, you tribute it to put it face down, represents the spell or trap, in this case, getting casted on her, that she's gonna prick her finger on a spinning needle and go into a deep sleep.
Hmm.
So
That's
So yeah, and then the last card in the fairy tale line is their spell card, which I also find kind of interesting because I'm pretty sure it's supposed to represent uh picking a different story and everything, because it says you reveal a spellcaster with 1850 attack and a different name monster than you control, and immediately you normal summon. So what I'm pretty sure what it's doing is it's just picking the like the story that it wants to read, because Luna, Raksha, Snow, Rella, and Sleeper are all based on fairy tales. So there you go.
wait, but then at some point it wants to read a harem manga because you can also search out the familiar possessed with it.
Yeah, I guess. That one was our thing though. I'm pretty sure like the familiar possessed don't really
I
have a
know.
thing, but that was a story that I just came up with one day because there's only one male. They do kind of have a lore, and the lore is like slightly that um the original 4 had a master and everything like that that kind of adopted them, and then came home later and everything and adopted 2 more, but the other 2 are like the light and the dark one are connected, and that's why they have a bracelet and everything. And it's still not for sure decided whether if dark has only one arm or not. I know that because it we only ever see the left arm. We never see the right arm, and we never get a clear visual of the right arm. So there's debate whether Dark only has one arm or not. But like, and a reason why Dark searches a light or a light level 3 or 4 spellcaster, and the reason why I think her name is Lina or Lina searches a dark one is because those two are linked by those collars that you see.
Yeah.
But it's pretty weird. Almost every spellcaster archetype is linked to each other, and in this really long and drawn out story, including uh, Witchcrafter, Magistus, uh, Win even, and like, or not Win, but like the Familiar Possessed and the spell and the prophecy monsters, and like all of them are have their own story that are really interconnected. Like Lina and Dark, right? There's, to put it this way, you can see that on both their left arms is a bracelet that connects them, and in their art, they're even connected light when you. But yeah, I think the Yu-Gi-Oh lore is pretty like deep, and but it's really bad because you have to like go out of your way to find it. It's and everything, and they don't just release books or something like that on it really, and they don't you it kind of tells the story through the card art itself. Like I have no idea Marauding Captain's lore. All I know is that he fought Giga Gaga Gigo or Gaga Gigo at one point.
Oh my god.
And
Actually, they do put out some lore books and stuff for some of the archetypes, but not all of them.
yeah, lore's pretty wild. I know that like for Yukio, um it kind of sucks though that like not every um archetype really has lore on them, especially like the anime archetypes. They don't really have a lot of lore usually. It's like usually oh, it's because this person used it in the anime and they told the story that way. Like eh. Speaking of Yu-Gi-Oh lore, in general, and the anime, one of my favorite pieces of lore that makes a lot of Kaiba fans mad is that the whole reason he loves Blue Eyes is that he is a Sith.
Oh, jeez.
Because
Historically, that's correct, though, if you go back on the old lore, I guess. If he has the ancient memories, just on a spiritual level, he's just like, I like blue eyes because it is my wife.
pretty much he likes it because it says, well, technically they were never actually together. He just kind of fell in love with her at like first sight, and she liked him back. But she liked him back because he rescued her as a kid. But he rescued her as a kid because it was the right thing to do. But and then when he saw her as an adult, he didn't remember he did that till she kind of reminded him on like his on like her deathbed. And but he was already kind of fallen for her or kind of in love with her anyway. So yeah, that's pretty much why he likes Blue Eyes. Why Yugi has such a strong attachment to Dark Magician and Dark Magician Girl are it's the representation of his friends Mahad and Mana. So because Mahad became the Dark Magician in the series finale at some point. Spoilers. This for I don't know how long that show ended, but yeah.
Been more than 10 years.
I feel like if you haven't seen it yet, I mean that's on you. uh, but it's kind of wild. I think Yu-Gi-Oh lore should be explored more, and I know that there are lore channels out there for Yu-Gi-Oh. I don't watch a lot of them to be honest. Um, there's a lot of things though that people uh like want more of. I know that for example, uh, the domain format is like a singleton Yu-Gi-Oh format that's basically the commander equivalent of Yu-Gi-Oh that's fan made. So that format is probably the only like fictional format I've actually had fun, like fan made format that I've actually had fun. The rest of them I hate. It's like everything I hate, and like I've tried like other formats, and almost every fan made format just it's just people. It seems like people complaining and crying about decks that they don't like their favorite deck.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Oh, that's awful, though.
Play this card trooper replay in the background while we find out while we talk about other things. I know that uh so have you been watching the progression series that like we put out the with the deck weekly, or am I the only one that's like keeping up?
I haven't really kept up with it this time around because it has a slower start than what I anticipated. Um, it definitely wasn't the Iron Showdown. Where are we at in that one right now, though?
Uh,
Like, what? I know
finished
you keep telling me about it, so
finished episode 16, I believe, is I just got the pendulum deck, so it's quite a ways away from like ending. I mean, we shouldn't it shouldn't be over until like February. I'm in February. But like, yeah, it's pretty cool. I do. There are good things and bad things about it.
it was an attempt at doing something. I mean,
It
might just have to go back to the do a season 2 of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Iron series, honestly.
maybe that's something that we could consider. I personally kind of enjoyed it, but I enjoyed it at the like towards the end and everything of it. But like I think episode 12 is the first episode in that progression series I thought was actually a really cool episode and kind of cool and fun. But the rest of them, yeah, I don't blame you. It kind of sucks. Like it feels bad to say that about a series. It was kind of fun playing it. It wasn't as fun watching it.
That makes sense. I mean, but I'm also looking at them, and the timing on some of them just aren't that awful, though.
Mm.
Um, Certainly not the Iron series, which sometimes would just have long episodes for the sake of it.
Yeah, I it probably would have been longer if we did what a lot of other people do for their progression is show off both profiles of what they. It definitely would have been, but I felt like I was like, eh. Yeah, I personally I always skip through the deck profiles anyway. I like I like kind of seeing like the brief overview of what the deck looks like, but I don't really like going through all the motions of actually like the card by card stuff like that because that to me is just boring. But
Yeah.
that might just be me. It it is the like worst part of that. I pretty pretty rough watching some of those.
Oh yeah. No, I've some of the Iron series was really rough to sit through. Like, cause I was sitting through it daily. That was I would take my lunch break, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I would just watch the episode, and sometimes it would hit a point where I'm like, oh, this is going to take my whole lunch break, or oh no, I'm going to have to finish this after I get off work. And some of them were pretty rough. Um, but
Must
then I adapted a weird system where when I was walking to work at that time, I'd be watching it and then I would pause it and then wait for my lunch break and finish the video. And that seemed to have worked because, when I walk to work, there's usually it takes me a good 10 to 15 minutes to walk to work. Slower if I'm watching a video or, working on something on my phone as I walk.
mm-hmm.
So,
It must have been interesting for you to watch it though, especially it wasn't as interesting for me to watch it because it's from my perspective time, but it must have been interesting from you because it's from my like I said, it's from my perspective instead of your perspective. So that must have been a lot more interesting because, like I said, for me it was like, oh well.
sometimes I would look at the hands that you got and then I would like tear it apart and I'd be like, yeah, there was no reason I should have won this at all.
I know that you when you watched it, you were like, man, no wonder you were struggling to win there in like some of those episodes because you were like, because I would take literally the only playable card out of your hand, and I went, yeah, and you were like, it's also impressive. I remember you saying it was also impressive how I would have some of the worst hands you've ever seen but still put up such a fight.
And then I know there was a few times where I'm watching it and you like I can almost hear it in your voice because I hang around you enough and I talk to you enough. I'm like you have that confidence in your voice and then like you have a really good field and I just like break through it and start answering everything and your voice just like slowly gets to that like dull, oh god, we're in this moment now.
Hmm.
And it's really great listening to that go off like that for me because it's like just looking at your hand. I'm like, yeah, there were a few instances where I'm just like, man, I really did answer that correctly. And you can hear me in the video a lot of the time, like, this isn't the correct play, but this is what I'm going to do. And then I do it and it works completely. And like, I can just like, I can feel it in your voice that you're wanting to say, why would you do that? No one would ever do that. This is the only instance where doing that is correct.
Uh, yeah, that does happen a lot, especially when I play versus you. I know that I've recently been told that we're both really, really good at this. That we're really good at picking apart boards. So,
Yeah.
um, a good example is so I mentioned domain earlier, and the domain deck I had before recently, I didn't actually like have like something anything like too impressive with and everything of a domain deck. I just kind of had like one that kind of worked, and one of our friends who's a very big advocate for domain, and just like we're talking so big of an advocate that every chance he gets he promotes it. Um, was like I really enjoy playing against you. Me, he said, because you will play these decks that don't like have anything too crazy looking about them, but will sit there and pick apart boards really well and everything. And you and I both, I think, have that ability. Just even with like really weak decks or decks that just a lot of people wouldn't know that they had the tools to do it. We'll sit there and just kind of pick apart and everything. And while we're going through our plays, we'll do stuff that a lot of other people wouldn't think to do. And it throws them off. And not only are we doing it this way, but we're not so focused usually on trying to out whatever and bait negate. We're just kind of making them have it. And I think that that's also something that separates us.
Yeah, well, my theory has and always will be like if it's an obvious thing that I know is there because I've seen it searched, I'll try and play around it and bait it. But the theory is show me that you have it. Make me play this card. And I learned that technique when I played Magic for like the few months that I really hit Magic the Gathering really hard. I learned from a really good Magic player how to play the game. And his theory was I am okay at the game because I don't fall for bluffs. I can obviously see things are bluffs, but my playstyle always seems to be show me you have it, or I'm not going to play around. I'm not playing around it. Show me you have it. And he's on sometimes a lot of players are trying to bluff out these strategies and these obvious things. And you, as just how you are, just goes, play it, show me it. And you don't fall into the mind game. I'm like, why? I'm like, if they don't have the player or they have the play, I know I can't play around it. I'm just gonna force it.
Yeah. It's the same friend that said that he likes playing against me. You know, uh, I remember we were both watching his stream. Just kind of started getting back into Yu-Gi-Oh, and he's Master Duel, and he ran into Cypherane. Literally just said, just have it, because that's the correct way. Not only to play against, it's the correct play to play against Cyphernames, but that's because Cyphernames themselves don't play like a Yu-Gi-Oh deck. They play like a very much like a Magic deck, specifically like a blue Magic. So
So
it's always pretty interesting. I think I really wish our locals could meet up more though to play, and it really seems like some of them don't want to, and it bothers me on like a fundamental level. They doesn't seem like they want to, even though they have the option more than you or I.
Yeah, that happens though. But I really like breaking apart boards and trying to find a way to win. I really like that. That's why when I'm like streaming and stuff, and I get some of those stupid wins that I don't think other people would, I just sit there and I have to go, yeah, I did it. I got 8,000 damage out and killed you with a kaiju that I summoned off of double evolution pill.
It,
Like
it
there's always a way. Unless there's not a way, then you just lose.
I think train of thought. I try. Yeah. Anyway, I lost it. That's not important. So, uh, any any other topics Yu-Gi-Oh related? I know that the Seattle regionals are coming up. Are you still on the fence about wanting to go to that?
I probably will try and hitch a ride if I can with someone and show up. I can always get a deck together and get some playtime in online. I mean, most any deck that I could build right now, I've already been playing for the past few months and kind of just generalistically, I just play a deck that I don't have to know every matchup in the game. I just have to know how to break the field that I'm playing against and try and win the game. Like that's just how I have switched my play style to.
It's like I remember at the last regionals, and you're like, "What am I gonna play?" I was like, "You have Sprite, just play that."
Yeah. And I did. The last regional I went to, I did play it and I went with go second, break boards, and I had a lot of fun doing it. Most of my matchups were just a lot of them were just kind of terrible or they knew how the sprite deck played, so it really the tricks that I did were just like sometimes they just scoop up, go, yeah, let's go to the next game, you've got me, and then sometimes they'd be like, yeah, I'll just answer this line of play, and that's just it's just the way it is. I somehow find the people that know the decks I'm playing pretty well.
It's funny because even though I had like the opposite response, where no one knew what I was playing and didn't know what the deck, but it still just wasn't good enough because all I faced was what was considered pretty much meta at the time, and like and it was wild. I actually didn't build a pretty good. I didn't build a good enough. All it comes down to is,
Yeah.
but uh, it's wild. It also showed me though that I'm just not in a good. It's the deck itself isn't good at this moment because I myself played really really well that tournament. So I think that
Yeah.
I even played through a Droll lock, and my deck could not uh beat a Droll lock. Yeah, that was wild that just ended up happening. That I made like a good board against a decent board. It wasn't like a good board, but it was a decent board uh versus Pearly, and I got Droll.
Yeah. Pearly's a pretty rough matchup, and they can play the draw and lock bird on your turn and just be fine. Like, if I were to put time into a deck and had IRL playing, I'd probably be playing the Pearly deck just because, I can mumble stupid things as I'm playing it. And
with you viewers who are just kind of been enjoying the random replays happening in the background. This is the deck I had and everything. I'm not gonna give a rundown of like it and everything. I almost did a deck profile on it, even though I didn't do too well. But I almost did a deck profile on it. But it's just Gold Pride Punk. It is what it is. I enjoyed the deck. I enjoyed the amount of advantage it got, but as you can see from my side deck, it wasn't really meant to like fight against certain strategies. I couldn't beat Pearly no matter what. The Kaiju's were there for Pearly, but if you don't draw them, you don't draw them. Evenly was meant for like a lot of other. It didn't matter.
Yeah, that deck's pretty fun. I've played it. I'm terrible at it, but I know at least a few of the combo lines now.
Oh, it hurts me watching you play it.
Don't worry, if I play it long enough and just rename all the cards after anime and stuff, it'll be fine.
I
And
just
then the fact that you kept up with my stupid naming scheme. No, summon Goku. Oh, okay, Son Goku. Okay. Or, no, actually, that time I was saying Sun Wukong for. God, who was that? That was one of them.
well, because there's Wagon, which is the spell searcher.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
yeah,
the spell searcher. Yeah,
it this deck is a blast, and I recommend anyone who just likes these like long combo decks and everything to try it out because you can do some really nutty stuff with it, and there is at no point, unless you get drolled, you can pretty much play through most things. Um, it does have a really really high skill ceiling. I will say, so if you want to challenge yourself, it's a good deck to do. Uh,
yeah, that is a pretty good one.
it's fun too. Yes, I don't have any much left to talk about this week on this podcast. You?
I don't think I have very much either. I'm sure next week I'll have more stupid things to say and cool things to
Well,
look at.
if you go to regionals, the Seattle region, we can talk about like our experience there on the podcast. But that's gonna do it for this day, for this video and this podcast. If it's your birthday today, happy birthday! And of course, and as always, stay